Welcome to Nerdium, the show that takes a look at the world around us and thinks, wow, being an adult sucks. So instead, let's focus on the things that we really care about: comics, games, movies, and any other thing our geeky hearts can desire. I'm your host, Matt, and with me is the guy that I keep assigning all the work to, the Hulk to my Thor, Carrie. This week's episode, I forced Carrie to watch the movie Bright, a movie that has received polarizing criticisms. Listen in as we discuss what we thought about the movie. Resistance is futile.
Hey, it's Kerry with your Nerd News for this, our first week of February 2018. We finally have a release date for Red Dead Redemption 2. Rockstar confirmed a date of October 26th of this year. Looks like I'll be taking a break from Halloween just to dole out my own brand of Wild West justice. For those of you not familiar with the series, you owe it to yourself to spend some time in the Wild West seeing what kind of trouble a firebrand like John Marston can get into. And also on the plus side, it'll be released as the weather cools down so you won't have to feel guilty staying indoors and playing video games all day. Fans of the DC Doomsday series are now stuck waiting for a March release of the fourth book in a 12-book story arc, which DC announced is now being released bi-monthly. I'm sure I speak for any readers when I just say, God damn it, DC, why are you doing this to me? Issue number 4 will arrive on shelves on March 28th. On the movie front, I know we talked about the release of Black Panther a couple episodes ago, but as it stands now, pre-ticket sales are set to make Black Panther one of, if not the most anticipated superhero movies ever released. So, DC, if you're watching or listening, just, take a few notes, maybe get yourself a ticket. I love you, just, you know what you've been doing. On the movie trailer front, earlier this week we tweeted that the Ant-Man and Wasp trailer dropped, which, as always, looks amazing. And a new trailer for the Ash vs. Evil Dead series has now come along. Now, if you're into the over-the-top gore and camp that the Evil Dead movies delivered, this show delivers it in droves. Plus, there's Bruce Campbell. I challenge anyone not to fall in love with that chin. And in Nothing is Sacred, My Childhood Was Just a Prologue for Netflix news, She-Ra is getting her own reboot on the streaming service. It was announced a little while ago to not much fanfare. However, fans of the show will know my undying love for rebooting My Childhood. No actual date has been issued for the show, however a window of 2018 has been given. On that front, if you're interested in what the girl version of He-Man delivered, you can find her on Netflix as well as her Big Brother's original series catalog. And if that piques your interests, I strongly and cannot stress this enough, if you were born in the 70s or 80s, go Gen X, watch the Netflix series Toys That Made Us. They have an amazing episode on He-Man which pushed the creation of She-Ra. That does it for this week's Nerd News. I'm Kerry, I'm just a big bald nerd, and with my jabbering out of the way, I'll throw it back over to Matt to get today's episode started. Goddamn reboots messing with my childhood all the
Someone take me.
Alright, so let's talk about the movie Bright. It's been already spoken a lot on lots of different podcasts, lots of different blogs. It's universally hated by critics and almost universally loved by fans. I'd say loved by fans stronger, but it's enjoyed by fans.
I'd say it was enjoyed by fans. I know that when you assigned me my little bit of homework to dedicate some time to it, I was skeptical. I wasn't super pumped. I'm like, what the hell is this guy thinking? Only because I kind of fed into the whole critique review. And I fell into my old trap, because I'm the first to say, screw the critics, watch the movie.
Yeah.
Critics are analyzing movies the same eye that they would analyze Schindler's List, as they would look at the Justice League. Not that the Justice League is the cinematic event of my lifetime, but you can't really hold the two to the same light.
No.
So for critics to kind of expect the world out of this,
they're approaching it from an Oscar kind of.
Yeah, and I don't know why they continue to do that. You know that although Bright's actually been nominated for a couple of things in the Oscars, makeup being one of them, because that was fantastic in the movie. I do try to give the benefit of the doubt, and I'm typically more interested in the audience score than I am the critic score.
Same.
I don't know why a food critic would let me know how bad McDonald's is when they're holding it to the same light of a 5-star whatever restaurant with however many Michelin stars. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Right? So you assigned us Bright.
I did. When I first saw the trailers, super pumped. Pretty much marked the date in my calendar it was coming out on Netflix. was looking forward to it almost more than Christmas at this point because it came out, I think, 3 days before Christmas.
I think it was. It came out to help keep us company during our Christmas vacation.
Yeah. So it looked like it had all the good workings of a great movie. By the people that brought you Suicide Squad, End of Watch, had Will Smith. Will Smith is almost just kind of the actor you can throw into a movie and it'd be an entertaining movie to watch, except for After Earth. Luckily, he barely had much involvement in that movie other than producing the spawn that...
They would have been better just planting a 2x4 on the ground and filming the 2x4 for 2 hours.
Yeah. But, so anyways, Bright, was looking forward to it. Was working the day that it came out, so wasn't able to actually see it on its release date. Fell into the same trap. Looked at the critics' reviews, saw how much it got dumped on. Other websites, they called it like hot garbage, absolute trash movies. They said they'd rather watch a sewage pipe in action than watch this movie. And I was like, well, that's pretty harsh.
I don't know. Have you ever seen a sewer pipe in action?
No. But at the same time, when you title your review that, I'm not going to click on your Twitter link that tells me to go read the article about how the sewer pipe is spewing shit. Like, no, I'm gonna go, okay, it sounds like a pretty terrible movie. I'm not going to watch it necessarily right away. A couple days go by. We're in the fall season finale. There's no new TV series or TV shows coming out.
Mm-hmm.
I've already plowed through a bunch of different movies. And Bright comes back up. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll give Bright a chance. Sat down, put it on, and I actually enjoyed it.
I was skeptical when you assigned it to me, but I thought, okay, fine. I'll give it a watch. We'll have something to talk about for a little while and have some witty little banter back and forth. The thing that appealed to me is that I'm a big fantasy nerd anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of orcs and elves and everything in between, I mean, doesn't take a lot to sell me on that idea. Just, you know, I was the kid that played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and Final Fantasy and all that kind of stuff. So a movie where you're taking that and kind of subverting the typical buddy cop movie with that universe, I think is kind of... You know, sure, I'll get in on that. Why not?
Yeah.
You know, it's an interesting concept. It looked pretty good from the YouTube previews that I was watching, and I like Will Smith for the most part.
Yep.
I find he kind of plays the same character all the time. Like, he always seems to be Will Smith. But for the most part, I do enjoy Will Smith being Will Smith, so it kind of works out in the long run.
Yeah, for the roles where you're expecting Will Smith to be Will Smith, then yeah, it's what you want. Like, it's what you're expecting. You don't want to be surprised with him playing a heavily more artsy role. Because when you see Will Smith...
I've seen him do the serious thing.
Yeah.
And again, you're right. It's when he's being too serious, it's hard to take him serious. Like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air playing a doctor talking about the seriousness of concussions in the NFL. I kind of fell short. I'm not going to lie. It did kind of fell short. But that being said, I kind of looked into the movie. You know, it had the huge big budget. You know, Netflix threw $90 million at this.
Yeah.
And they had the sequel ready to go before the first one was even done shooting.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, it's also the first Netflix film to just get a sequel.
Yeah.
So, you know, they sacked up in a big way, just kind of saying, here we go. And to their credit, a lot of the Netflix original content I enjoy. I'm a huge fan of Orange is the New Black. Was a huge fan of House of Cards until Kevin Spacey ruined it for everybody. I'm a fan of a lot of their original content. So, again, everything was kind of saying, you know, you might really enjoy this movie, except for the critic reviews, which were really, really falling short.
Yeah.
The saving grace for it all, like I said, is that it was directed by Max Landis, who worked on Suicide Squad.
Yep.
You know, knows Will Smith, and he was quoted saying that this universe that he's in is his own Star Wars.
Yeah.
Which I think is a pretty big stretch. I really wouldn't be throwing that around too much. But all in all, it wasn't too bad of a movie.
I don't think it's that big of a stretch. I think there's a lot of potential. He kind of opened up a whole new kind of world and universe that hasn't, like, it's been explored many times before. You got Lord of the Rings, you got all those fantasy movies. But he kind of brought something different. Like, it's you don't often get the fantasy world mixed in with the real world the way he did it, like current real world.
Yeah.
Like you get this magical, mystical world that's grown up alongside of like the industrial age that's kind of brought forward. Like you get that in, like, let's say Final Fantasy games. And to an extent, say the Supernatural series, you get the ghosts and goblins and monsters.
Yeah, you see a lot of that. You see it in, what's the TV show? Once Upon a Time. They kind of play with that every once in a while.
Yeah. But it's an isolated kind of...
Yeah, it really is its own little niche,
yeah.
Right? You're really going at it from really one direction. And that's a great idea that he took the traditional buddy cop by way of like Lethal Weapon, you know, and really kind of subverted this whole other universe in there. But there's a danger to doing all of that. And part of that danger is you got to let us know what the rules of the world are.
Yeah, you're cramming a lot into just 1-2 hour movie.
Yeah. And, you know, the opening credit sequence, I think, did a pretty good job at kind of letting you know the strife, the chaos that goes on in the world when you have not just different races of people like we have today, but literally different sentient species that are, you know, more or less on an equal playing field in terms of the developmental world. You know, you have your elves, you have your orcs, you have, you know, everybody and his brother. You even have centaurs. And I want to know where the hell their movie is. Because I saw 2 in that movie, and I feel that I've been denied by not seeing more of them.
It makes you wonder what other races there are in that world.
Well, they hint towards it, right? But what they kind of do is that they really focus on the dichotomy between the elves, the orcs, and the humans. Mm-hmm. And as much as I appreciate a good social commentary as much as the next guy, it was pretty heavy-handed on this one. Yeah. So heavy-handed to the fact where, and you and I were talking about this earlier, you know, it's not unbelievable that 3 completely different races would not play nice well all the time together. It's not, look at today's world.
Yeah.
The problem is that the middle ground doesn't exist. Every human hates the orc. Every orc hates every human and every elf. Every elf thinks they're better than every human and every orc. Yeah. There's nobody that ever stops and says, well, you know, hey, they're not all that bad. I mean, even Will Smith's character, his wife is telling him, I don't want you working with that orc.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to work with that orc. You know, nobody wants to play nice in the sandbox. Nobody wants to take a step back. And the one cop there, Ike Barinholtz plays, he goes on this long tangent rant about how his ancestors beat the piss out of the orcs years ago.
Yeah, in Russia.
But like those huge battles were like 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what any of my family members were doing 2,000 years ago. I don't even think they had escaped main continent Africa 2,000 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, I understand the conflict. I know what they're playing on.
Yeah.
But they could have done it maybe a little bit more subtly. Maybe have a little bit more, you know, where are the humans fighting for orc rights? Where are the orcs looking for, you know, the orcs have walled themselves off. The humans have walled themselves off. Everybody's walled themselves off.
Yeah. They really opened up a whole lot and didn't explain too much. Like, you got a whole lot of racism between the species. And it kind of makes you wonder, is there still, like, racism between, like, the humans? Like what... Or are they completely unified because they have somebody else to hate?
It's almost it's the whole analogy of the enemy of my enemy.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, you know, yeah, you're a different color or you're a different creed or you're different this, but shit, you're not an orc. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's almost what that's the unifying factor. But even in today's society, with the most amount of nonsense that you can see, there's always people that are willing to take either a middle of the road or turn around and say, hey, you know, this is nonsense. Mm-hmm. We need not be carrying on like this. But I mean, that's just kind of a side note to how it is. I think the bigger issue there is that, you know, there's a universe that we should have probably known a little bit more about before we hit the ground running with the world. Because this is already an established world.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't the orcs and elves just showed up.
No.
This is, we've all lived together for a while.
Yeah. Makes you wonder about how the history kind of played out, and also why, if there's elves and orcs and there's been magic and all that, how the world still evolved and developed to essentially what it is still today. Like, how do you have guns and
Exactly.
body armor for
Why
cops when there's magic wands.
Right? You know, Los Angeles looks like Los Angeles. It doesn't look like anything that's ever seen any sort of magic.
Yeah.
And, you know, throughout the movie, they kind of play on this.
It's kind of a dig at Los Angeles.
Right.
There's no magic there.
No matter what happens, you're Los Angeles. You're never going to change.
Yeah.
But, like, they kind of play off of it with the federal agents that are responsible for magic. And, you know, so you know what's out there. You know, the very first crime scene, say, hey, magic has happened here. Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing.
Yeah.
And the opening there, they kind of do, a lot of spooky movies do it with like the one random Bible verse from Revelations or some darn thing.
Yeah.
And they do it with this movie, but there's no it's not like we're working off of a book. You know, at the beginning of The Lord of the Rings, you could take a quote from The Fellowship of the Ring and it would kind of work.
Yeah.
This is just a creation in a creation in a creation. So they kind of go on about the wands and how there's these wands, but I mean, it's not illegal to use magic.
No.
To the best of my knowledge, they certainly didn't.
It looks like it's regulated, but
exactly. It's I mean, it's like firearms. We're allowed to have firearms, but if you follow the rules, you may have these firearms, right? And it's the same thing in here. If there's magic, then there are rules regarding magic. You know, we kind of delve into that. The main plot point of people trying to bring the quote-unquote Dark Lord.
Sauron.
Yeah, the Sauron of that world, right?
Yeah.
And if they had spent a good 5-6 minutes kind of explaining the whole bringing back the Dark... Because we've beaten the Dark Lord.
Yeah.
We know that we've beaten the Dark Lord.
Yeah.
Maybe spend some time explaining what the Dark Lord was all about and why we should be bothered by him. Or her, or it, or whatever it was.
Yeah, and why we have the group, the Inferni, and the Shield of Light. What are these gangs? Like, you get the guy that's talking crazy. At first, you think that he's just a crazy person. He's not a great person. Then you find out that he is affiliated with this group, the Shield of Light, and you're like, well, who are these people? It's never really.
They kind of mention the Shield of Light at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And they kind of bring up the Shield of Light at the very end of the movie.
Yeah.
And nowhere in between do they ever mention the Shield of Light again.
Yeah.
You would have thought in the whole process, you know, the beginning, the middle, the end, at some point in time, the Shield of Light would have been there. They would have popped up. There's chaos reigning from through this movie from the beginning to end. It's actually very exciting. It's done very, very well. Absolutely. I enjoyed all of it. But with all the chaos and the explosions and the magic popping up here and the magic popping up there, somebody would take notice.
Yeah.
The Inferni certainly took notice. How come the Shield of Light is not taking notice?
Exactly. They almost focused entirely on Will Smith and Joel Edgerton that played Jacoby.
Mm-hmm.
The same way that they focused on Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Pena in End of Watch, where they're the main focus of the movie. You don't see a whole lot of other exposition where you get the elves talking to them like offset, or you're off to the side. You get that a little bit, just because you do have to fill in some of the gaps of the story, because they are trying to cram a lot into one movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I did enjoy that they did focus on the relationship between.
They do a good job, because first and foremost, this is a buddy cop drama.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They did do those two characters justice. Will Smith clearly doesn't like Jacoby because Jacoby's an orc.
Yeah.
Jacoby, he's really just trying to show everybody that orcs are just like everybody else. They just have monstrous tusks that he's gone out of his way to file down. They have different shaded skin of a different texture. You know, like again with the social comedy, it can be traced back to our own developmental history, right?
Yeah. It's also interesting, actually, with the comment in the movie where they said that's why orcs are commonly the most played, or they're mostly the offensive line of football teams.
the linebackers,
the linebackers.
They're huge, they're big, they're slow.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Wow.
You know, but they do make that reference that orcs are clearly big, bulky, burly dudes.
Yeah.
You know, and it's great that they do give some exposition on how the world works. They do spend a little bit of time. Like, it's not like you walk into this blindsided.
Yeah.
They just could have spent a little bit more.
And maybe in the sequel they kind of expand a little bit more. They fill in some gaps, but I'm interested to see where the world kind of goes.
I think you could have taken this whole thing, and instead of dropping $90 million on a 2-hour movie, 1 hour and 51 minutes to be exact, you could actually create a huge series with this.
Yeah.
You know, would you have Will Smith and Joel Edgerton doing their thing? Maybe not. Who knows?
Yeah, and Will Smith did bring a lot to the role, and he brought a lot of hype to the movie, but was he necessary for that role? You could have probably have had somebody else too. Joel Edgerton, good actor, played really good in the role.
Mm-hmm.
Heavily in makeup. You could have had another actor it's not that he's the Will Smith level of acting necessarily, or just pay scale, let's say.
Yeah.
You could have still had somebody less, could have acted just as well. You're just going to throw them in heavy makeup. It worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. They could really spin off of this in a good way.
Yeah.
You know, I think they really do have a good property that they could build on, that they could work with. I think that we could spend a little bit more time delving into the elves and what they're up to.
Yeah.
You know, they're really portrayed as the big 1%. They're portrayed as you know, the sleek. They're sexy. They got the money. They got it all. Yeah. You know, they're almost held in this almost Illuminati revere because they're mysterious. They keep themselves. They have their own portion of town that is completely separate. Yeah. And guarded by police, and it's brought up on a couple of times that you just don't go into Elf Town. Yeah. That's not for you. But then I just found that the only thing that kind of irritated me is they spent about a third of the movie in exposition. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like they really could have set everything up, and then we could have gone with it. Yeah. But because you're walking into it not knowing anything, they have to dedicate a whole third of the movie to just explaining the Inferni, explaining this, explaining that. You know, why would Jacoby want to become a police officer? You know, if it means that he's got to, you know, leave the orc culture. Mm-hmm. You know, he's forsaken this people. These people don't like him. His own people don't like him. So I appreciate that story of him walking his own path. You know, mm-hmm. Think Worf from Star Trek being the only Klingon Starfleet officer at the time. Yeah. There's, you know, it's always a good story to have the guy that forsakes it all to do something different. Yeah. You know, and it plays well in the movie. But it just, there's so much more that they need to do. You know, and I think that by not having any of that, you start to spend so much time wondering about other parts that have nothing to do with the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, and you kind of wonder, like, it's interesting because they did open up this whole can of worms of a universe, and I'm interested to see, like, what spins out of it, like the sequel, maybe a series, comic book series possibly. I can only imagine the fan fiction that's going to come out of this. Like, just people going wild with it.
Stories like these are made for fan fiction. Well, universes like these are made for fan fiction.
Yeah, because you bring out a whole world and you don't explain much of it. You give people opportunity to try and explain little corners of this universe. Yeah. Or just kind of put their own story into it. And you're going to open up a lot of really creative stuff.
Yeah, because we're really, for the whole movie, we're really looking at two police officers trying to protect a girl, going through, from beginning to end, going through chaos, just trying to make it through the night. Yeah. Like, we've seen the story a dozen times. Yep. The spin that they've put on it with the fantasy world clashing with the real world, it really, really is fun.
It works.
You know, it does work really, really well. If you're a fantasy fan, this is a great movie for you. If you're a buddy cop, Lethal Weapon kind of end of watch fan, there's another great movie for you. It really, really blends well. Mm-hmm. If you're a critic that is looking for the next Oscar winner of the year, you're going to hate this movie inside and out. There's nothing there for you. Yeah. You know, if all you do is eat Gordon Ramsay's food, you're not going to McDonald's though.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and like they did really well actually developing the two main characters. Mm-hmm. You have almost a little bit of hate on Will Smith for how he treats Jacoby through the movie. Yep. You see Jacoby trying his best to win him over. You see him constantly like trying to be his friend. Like you never see him kind of waver. Will Smith eventually opens up saying, "You don't want me as a friend. kind of opens up some backstory to Will Smith's character too, where what's happened in his past, where he is kind of shunned also. Like, the reason why he's paired up with Jacoby is because nobody else wants to work with him.
Mm-hmm.
And they make that comment too. So it's kind of interesting, like, you're wondering, Will Smith has a history, Jacoby has a history. And then also with Jacoby, like, they did a really good building of the character. And for spoiler alert, when the scene where he gets shot, you kind of feel something there. Like, you're like, holy shit.
I was not expecting, like, when they were opening up as Jacoby's doing his thing, talking to Will Smith, and Will Smith is dicking around on his phone, and then somebody just comes out, boom, shoots him right in the face. Like, I was not expecting that.
Yeah.
Like, even that scene took me back. I was like, wow, shit. And it was great in creating some of the conflict that's between Will Smith and Jacoby. Yeah. You know, Will Smith, who we always call Will Smith, is just Daryl Ward. So yeah, between Ward and Jacoby, there's this tension there because, you know, Jacoby never managed to catch the guy that shot him. Mm-hmm. So Will Smith is convinced, well, that's because he was an orc and you were an orc. So clearly you just let him go. Yeah. And again, with the spoiler alert, we find out later on that no, the kid he grabbed was not the guy that shot Will Smith. So we let the kid go because, let's face it, in this world, again, humans just hate orcs. That's the end of it. They're just to be hated. Yeah. And it's a part of the movie that really just started to wear on my nerves. Like, we were constantly reminded that everybody hates orcs. Yeah. It was thrown at you. It didn't have to be continually hammered in. Yeah. Again, I love a good social commentary. Hollywood movies, forever, they've always been social commentary for the most part. So I can appreciate that. But there's a difference between laying out some social commentary and then reminding you every 10 minutes. It's starting to get a little close into preaching. Exactly. It does get very, very, let's all be tolerant of everybody. And it starts to take away from the message because you just start hating everybody. Mm-hmm. You know, I found the whole police system, everybody, if you've ever watched Gotham, the whole thing is the police service is corrupt. Yeah. But then you watch this and lo and behold, everybody's corrupt and doesn't even matter if it happens to an orc and whatever. And it kind of starts to deteriorate what could be a great quality movie. You know, we have the magic wand, one of the 3 big magic wands that pops up. The only one that pops up in the movie, but of the lore that this universe was based on. Well, now everybody wants to get their hands, unfortunately, on the wand. Mm-hmm. You know, and this is everybody lusts for this thing, but everybody knows if you touch it, you're done. Yeah. You're not allowed to touch it. Hence, you know, you have to be what they call a bright. Hence the movie. Yeah. You know? And it's pretty much telegraphed from the initial casting how that turns out. It's telegraphed to a point, but for me, when I was watching the movie, I mean, it was telegraphed to a coin toss. Yeah. It can only be one of 2 people who are going to end up with this thing. You know, and there's all this talk about who's in this prophecy and who's special and who's this. In numerous times throughout the movie, they come up with this, well, your partner's special, or he's the chosen one, or this and that. It's like, come on. I probably shouldn't have an idea at like 20 minutes into the movie. Who's going to end up with the special MacGuffin? Yeah, it's all about the MacGuffin. And I guess actually when they say, like, when Jacoby ends up getting blown away and then brought back, and then they say that he's in the prophecy's about him and all that, I guess you kind of almost forgot the fact that maybe the interpretation of the prophecy is wrong, and Will Smith's character is actually in the prophecy because he gets shot, comes back, same kind of thing. Him and Jacoby are almost the same side of the same coin. They almost walk parallel lines through the story. Yeah. And I mean, granted, when they ended up shooting Jacoby, I was pissed. I was so pissed, especially after it was found out, you know, oh, you saved my son, but I gotta kill you anyway. Yeah. my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, what the hell? And granted, a minute later, it's like, all right, movie, you're gonna get to live another day here.
You're like, damn these orcs! I hate them now.
Right? It's like you got lucky, movie. You just got lucky. That's all this is. But it's you can kind of get, when that whole scene was going down. Which if you've ever watched Orange Is the New Black, Brad William Henke is Dogu, whatever the heck his name. He's that guy. He's boss orc.
Yeah.
And I was amazed with how well he played that character, given he's got giant tusks coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons they get nominated for the makeup award.
Makeup was amazing.
Yeah. If you've ever watched Star Trek Discovery and watched the Klingons slush mouth their way through speaking Klingon, you have to wonder why all the orcs with giant tusks coming out of their mouth in this movie can speak so clearly. It really, like halfway through the movie, I had to stop it and ponder to myself, like, how come they got it right?
It's probably because Discovery's like catered by Skippy Peanut Butter or something. I don't know.
Who knows? I don't know. They need to stop rinsing their mouth out with super glue before they start talking.
Yeah. Although Discovery completely decided, different story, different discussion. Doing incredible right now, like incredible things with Star Trek.
Oh yeah, we can talk about Star Trek on another episode. They are killing it for their for what they're doing. But I mean, back to the movie.
Yeah.
Post resurrection scene. I mean, it's that kind of moment where he kind of took you back a little bit, and then there was that little bit of reprisal where you're just like, oh, okay, all right, good. And I really like getting that feeling throughout movies. You know what I mean? You get that surprising emotional attachment that you may or may not have known that you had, suddenly ripped away from you and then given back to you. Like, here you go. I've only taken this lollipop off you just to make you cry a little bit. Here you go. Have that back.
Gives you a moment to kind of take a knee and just kind of all of a sudden sink into what the movie is actually happening at this point. So.
Well, it was at that point in the movie that I found that I was a lot more invested than I thought I would be.
Yeah.
The only problem is that you're about 2/3 into the movie at that point in time.
Yeah, probably even further than that. I think at that point, like I think it's
it's really weird. It's you're either 3/4 or 2/3 in. It's really near the big climactic fight that you're there.
Yeah,
and it's certainly a really bumpy road getting there with a lot of twists and turns. But again, there's just so many little plot holes that pop up here and there.
Back to the whole elves, like they're up to something.
Oh yeah, they're completely up to no good.
Yeah.
Throughout the movie, you see the federal. I keep wanting to say Ministry of Magic, but that's the wrong series.
Yeah, it's was it Department of Magic?
Yeah, the Bureau of Magic, the Department of Magic. Think FBI, but with wands for goodness sake.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, just the way it was portrayed, I was convinced that Candemir is his name.
Yeah, Candemir.
Elf Vincent Vega.
Yep.
So Elf Vincent Vega was. Like, I was sure he was the bad guy. I was so convinced for the majority of the movie that this dude is just up to no good.
Yeah, as we were speaking earlier, I almost wonder if they told him when he was, like when they were filming, act like you're the bad guy because you're the bad guy. Like, I wonder if they convinced him that that's the role that he was and then didn't let him know, because he played really well into that role and just kind of, you couldn't lock onto him. Like, you weren't sure.
I could not, man. I couldn't get a beat on him no matter how hard I tried. And his partner was, big goofy human, okay, fine, good cop, bad cop, I get it. But just maybe that's the way that elves are supposed to be portrayed, just mysterious. And this isn't the first series to ever do this. If you ever, even Lord of the Rings, elves are typically very mysterious, very opulent. Like they're always looking good. They're always in giant anything.
Usually the assholes of.
They are typically the assholes, and until you get to I think it's like a video game. I think it was Dragon Age where they're really a servant class. I think that was Dragon Age's big thing on the elves. But that aside, you really get the idea that no elf is up to any good, except for we spend the whole movie protecting Tika. As it was, she's the one that's forever hogging the wand. But she's run away. We're protecting her. She's just got to get back to the Shield of Light. She's escaped from the Inferni. Again, it's this weird Illuminati sort of secret society that the elves are.
Yeah.
And that is established very, very upfront. Like they never really play with that idea. But even his character it's and then that's the other part of the movie is that, you really don't have a solid antagonist until I want to say halfway through the movie.
Yeah.
When Leela finally shows up and she's queen shit of Shit Mountain.
Yeah, she's kind of in the movie. She's kind of around doing stuff, but like it's not clear that you don't know if she's a henchman at this point. Like,
well, no, her and Trinity and Neo are running through the bloody strip clubs, chopping everybody up and doing all kinds of crazy Matrix shit.
Great scene.
Great scenes, but I mean, you don't really realize that she is that until halfway through. And it's like, well, typically I kind of like to know what we're going up against at the beginning of the movie, but okay, fine. It kind of flowed into it, but again, it was almost hammered in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we totally forgot to say that this is the bad guy, which is why we spent so much time thinking that the Minister of Magic, Elf Vincent Vega, is the bad guy.
Yeah.
Then she shows up, and all of a sudden, Elf Vincent Vega is like, okay, I totally get that he's just being an elf. He's not being a dick. He's just being an elf, which is almost the same thing.
Yeah, it's expected. Canamir and his partner, like as I was thinking earlier, really kind of like his partner really reminded me of Harvey Bullock from Gotham, like kind of like the fat, bearded, bumbling.
They almost have that look where Canamir is very much the James Gordon, very straight and narrow, clean suit, clean everything. As much as he does look like Vincent Vega from Pulp Fiction.
And he's a little weird with the metal necklace thing that he's got going on. But anyways.
Yeah, who knows? Elf fashion.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did see that kind of when I was watching the movie. I thought, I've seen that before. And yeah, like a Harvey Bullock, James Gordon sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And that could be a great spin-off from this movie. You know what I mean? That's another thing that they could spend a lot more time in this. And I think that's one of the great parts about this movie is that it can branch off in a billion different directions.
Yeah.
Really, really it can. And as much as that is a benefit to the movie, it's also a very big detriment to the movie.
It is.
Because there's so much going on.
Yeah. You're trying to, like... It is definitely that he tried to create his own Star Wars, but expected to create all of his own Star Wars in one movie and then let it expand. Like, where Star Wars was a movie, it happened, there was a whole unexplored universe, but it didn't try to be bigger than it was.
It also spent a little bit of time at the very beginning with the rolling text.
Yeah.
That you really can't do nowadays without being referenced to Star Wars. But with that rolling text, you get the idea for the universe. You get the idea for the rules. You know what's going on. They could have done something similar to that.
Yeah.
Instead of doing a one-sentence, one-frame quote from nothing about three wands, they could have spent a little bit of time. Multiple shots. Like I said, the credit scene did itself some good justice, establishing the social dichotomy. Mm-hmm. But it didn't give you an idea of the world that you're in.
What they could have almost done was some kind of like a prologue comic book series or something leading up to it, just to kind of give you some taste.
A couple of YouTube shorts.
Something so you knew what you're getting into.
Even something like what AMC did there with Flight 197 or what it was. It was it was an accoutrement to Fear the Dead, where it was like little 30-second clips.
Yeah, webisodes.
Little webisodes. They could have done something like that. And as much as I kind of like to have everything in front of me all at once, I don't mind doing a little YouTube surfing. Nowadays, you can watch YouTube sitting at work on lunch, sitting in the bathroom, sitting at the dinner table. It's really just there, so it's not like a huge inconvenience for all of us.
Yeah.
They really could have done that. But, all in all, final verdict, did you enjoy the movie?
I enjoyed the movie a lot. It was well done. Don't think it deserved the 27% it got on Rotten Tomatoes.
No, it did not.
Rotten Tomatoes is definitely one of those things that's kind of in controversy right now, being too political. People are wondering about their rating system, but...
I think what we said at the beginning of the podcast about critics, there's a difference between the critic score and the people that see the movie. Mm-hmm. I'm really not interested as to whether the person that only watches movies as an art form I really don't care about their opinion as to whether or not they really like the latest Superman movie or the latest Marvel movie or the latest comedy romp. I'm not interested because they're not looking at it with the eyes that I'm looking at the movie.
Yeah, I want to hear from a fantasy fan what they liked about the movie.
Did it do fantasy good? Did it do the buddy comedy genre good?
Yeah, and you see that from the fans, where the people that enjoy that type of movie, they said, no, it was a great movie. Everybody enjoyed it. Like the pace of the movie, enjoyed it. Good pace.
Yep.
Good characters. So much to expand on. Introduce a few different elements. Like
there is countless ways that this can go.
Yeah.
Like we said earlier, it's the first Netflix original to get its own sequel. They threw $90 million at this movie, and true to form, it was a commercial success. It was not a critical success. Mm-hmm. But when you're making movies, do you care about what the local newspaper has to say, or do you care about the money it's going to bring in?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And I think this did a lot of us a lot of good to see something new, something different.
Yeah.
It wasn't too complicated. It wasn't too funny. We certainly have our critiques on certain things. Mm-hmm. Some of the jokes fell kind of flat for me.
Yeah, they might have hit home a little bit more if you knew the background of where the jokes were coming from.
Yeah, exactly. When they try to do the social commentary jokes, it just kind of, it was more of a than it really was funny. The fairy lives don't matter joke. I kind of got a smirk out of it, but it was one of those like, you're already being so heavy-handed with the social commentary. Do you even got to throw that in there?
No, for a moment there, I was like, whoa. Does that joke fly?
Yeah,
I'm like, wait a minute.
Are we allowed to make that joke?
Yeah, is that PC? Wait, is there PC in this world?
Yeah, well, and that's just clearly it is not.
Yeah.
It is not PC.
Yeah.
But it's not for a reason, and that is because everybody's is in their own little quadrant. You know what I mean? Everybody, it's like those big squares that you had in the playground in public school. You were in that square, somebody was in that square, and everybody had their own little square, and that's how it was, and there was no intermingling whatsoever.
Yeah.
You see a little bit of it. There's reference to it that, not everywhere is Los Angeles. There's a reference to Miami where everybody just kind of gets along well together.
Yeah.
There's references to, it's not just the elves in power. It's not the Inferni are not just the elves, but they really do need a better job at expanding on that, having a little bit more fun with it. There's clearly more than enough that they can build on. Yeah. They could make prequel movies up and down about this movie that sound like it would be just as good as this movie.
Yeah, prequels, sequels, spin-offs.
It can go, like you said, webisodes, comic books, fan fiction, compendiums everywhere. There's some serious fun you can have with this.
Oh yeah.
And as much as Ego, I think, is talking for Max Landis to call it as his own Star Wars, it could certainly turn into its own Star Wars if put in the right hands and given the opportunity.
Yeah, it'd definitely be kind of a welcomed. It could definitely be like our generation Star Wars, like the Star Wars of old. It's starting to kind of. It might be on its way out.
There's no shortage of science fiction out there.
No.
This is the first time I've seen fantasy kind of brought to the forefront in a while, right?
Yeah.
When was they had the Hobbit movies, but the Hobbit's the Hobbit. They had the Lord of the Rings movies, but that's its own thing. They
have the terrible Dungeons and Dragons movies from the Wayans brothers.
We don't have to talk about those.
Shut up, Steve.
we're if Steve keeps putting stuff in our own paperwork, then he's not getting out of the trapdoor anytime soon.
No, Steve the intern.
Steve the intern really needs to learn his role, and really needs to do things to stay out of the closet and the hutches. But no, all in all, it was really for you to recommend it to me. It was great 2 hours to spend. I think we've all watched enough movies where we would love that hour and a half, 2 hours back.
So what you're saying is you've had worse homework assignments?
I've had much worse homework assignments, yes.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up our discussion of Bright. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it. If you didn't, well, feel free to comment why. Also, another Netflix series or Netflix original that I'd recommend is Spectral. Very well done little action movie. It's pretty much a video game turned into a movie. It's well done. But yeah, check it out. Netflix does some good stuff. So I'm going to wrap it up for today.
Bye, guys.
And that concludes this episode of Nerdium. I hope you all had a good time. As always, you can look for us on Twitter at Nerdium Podcast. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Let us know what you'd like us to cover. Give us a shout and tell us what you'd like to hear us carry on about, argue about, or discuss. Feel free to message us or drop us a line at nerdiumpodcast@gmail.com. And if you've liked what you've heard today and have a few moments, give us a quick rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe and tell your nerdy friends and family all about us. Until next time.